The goal of the robot lawnmower is to be able to complete the task of mowing the lawn without any interaction from you, saving you time for things that you love. Over the years, these have gotten better and more advanced, but really there's only 3 important things that you need to make the lawnmower successful. 1 is a very good navigation system. 2 is the ability to cut the lawn quickly with a wide cutting deck. And 3 is being able to nicely edge around the lawn with a trimmer or getting as close as it can to the edge. And today we have the ECOVACS GOAT A3000 LiDAR Pro that includes all of those features. We have the holoscope 360-degree LiDAR to be able to navigate around the lawn. We have a nice wide cutting deck with the 2 rotors and 6 blades. And then we have the new edge trimmer function that's going to get really close up to the edge of the lawn. Huge thank you to ECOVACS for sponsoring this video. Today we're going to really be testing this out, and I'm including a new stat in my videos to see how effective these are, and that's going to be interactions per mow, IPM, which means every time I have a full mow complete, I'm going to tell you how many times I had to interact with the mower to get it done. Of course, I'm going to average that out over the total mows that I do, but the lower the number on that score, the better the lawnmower. So this is going to be our baseline that we're setting today. Let's get started. Now, as you saw, this is extremely easy to set up. All we need to do is put the charging station down here on the ground, screw it into the ground, and then we need to plug it in. So we have a long cable there that we can use. Then for the mower itself, I just needed to put in a few screws for the edge trimmer, charge it up. I've connected to the ECOVACS app, and now I'm gonna go through and map it. I'll show you how I do that later. I've now finished mapping all of the areas. It automatically creates a path between the two. You can come in here into the app and adjust the areas. You can add, combine, divide, rename, so I could adjust names there. Here we can add a path. I did adjust one so that it drove across the driveway instead of some random pattern. Here you can add a low avoidance zone, which is great because before, when we tested out the A3000 last year, it wouldn't go under the swings. So if it's having a problem doing that, I can now create a zone so it knows it can still go under even though it's seeing the swings are there. Then we have a no entry zone, so maybe there's an area like under the tramp we don't want it to go to. We could create that. And then here we have some map options. So I love how many options we have there. Now, one really cool thing, now that we have this mapped, so we see this basic standard map, but there's this new 3D option. Is what this does is it shows us the 3D dot map of what the LiDAR has seen. So this is so cool. Never seen anything like this before. So there's this big tree we have in the backyard here. Here you can see the trampoline and other trees that are there. And you can see fences and other obstacles, cars, and so on. So there's the dot map that it is able to see. I think that is so cool that they're giving us that much data on what has been processed. And you can see the whole house kind of in there all the way up. I didn't know it could see that high, but it can see all the way to the roof, which is really neat. So now that we have that, we can go ahead and begin mowing. So excited to do this. Now there's a few different ways. We can do auto. We can have it mow the entire lawn. We can do by area. We can just do trimming, or we can even manually mow and use the phone here as our remote. The other option is we can also create different schedules, and we can go ahead and dock it. But if I go into the settings here, this is where we can kind of specify what is going to be happening in the lawn. So let's real quick check the area mowing mode. So for each area, you can choose what you want it to do, and then you can also have it change the direction per area, or you can just have it change on a weekly basis. So right now, we're just gonna keep that standard. And then in here, we can set the height. We're gonna mow it as high as we can right now and slowly change that as we go on. So here we have 2 different options for edge mode. This is really cool. Love seeing improvements here. We have mark flush boundaries. So to improve the mowing coverage at the edge, mark where your lawn is flush with a non-lawn area. So if I have the patio here that's flush, I can mark that so that right here it knows it can go on and off. So I love that I'm able to do that. There is another part over here. So here it's saying it needs to be at least 6 feet. And then here we have a bunch. And there you go, that looks pretty good. I could adjust that more, but I think that's where we're gonna set it for now. And then the second option is mark boundaries. So after setup, you can select the configured boundaries for GOAT to perform trimming. So now we can choose where we want it to do the actual trimming of the lawn. And right now everything is green. That's what I want. I want it to trim every single location. We'll adjust that as needed. So I think that's all we need to set up for now. We are ready to begin mowing. So we're just gonna go back here And we are going to make sure auto is selected and hit start. Here we go.
Exit the station. Please wait.
And it is off, starting to mow the lawn. Now, before I could hear the blades spinning, but I'm not hearing them spin at all. We were just hearing a little bit of cutting every once in a while. This area isn't too long yet, so that is working. Now let's talk about how this navigation system is going to get the job done. So this is using a holoscope 360-degree dual LiDAR navigation system. So what that means is not only does it have the LiDAR on the top that's spinning 360 degrees around, but it also has the sensor in the front so it can detect if objects are in front of it. Now during the day, this is actually hard to see what it is doing, but here we can take a look at night vision. So here, when the lights are on, you don't see anything, but as soon as the night vision cameras come on my security camera, there you can see the lights hitting the wall so that it knows exactly where it is, but still giving you 2-centimeter precision even in the dark. No need for those antennas, and it can find its way through everything that you have mapped it out through different paths, and this is able to cover 3/4 of an acre of lawn. And there it was able to go under the swing, no problem. So I think they are able to understand it can go under those and complete the full lawn. So here's the super long area. It still has to cut, but here you can see where it has cut, and it's creating a nice carpet-like finish, being able to quickly get those. And that was pretty thick grass already. Did a great job cutting there. So this might take a couple passes to fully see the benefit. You do need to cut your grass down to about 4 inches before you start mowing, but we like to give it the full test here on a unmanicured lawn because we don't have another lawnmower we're gonna test out. So it'll be interesting to see how this does when it's complete. Now it almost got stuck here once. It was able to get past, but it did get stuck a second time. Now I didn't put this as an obstacle, so I need to go in the app and mark it. I'm gonna count it for now, but I've labeled that it was because I hadn't set up the map properly. Now that it's completed mowing the full grass, it is going through and doing a edging of the lawn, so getting as close as it can to without using the edge trimmer. All right, here's our first interaction. It got stuck here trying to turn by here. We do have some loose dirt and it wasn't able to get all the way docked. So I'm gonna move it and then start it again. And we're gonna push play and okay. And I need to tap continue in the app. And here's an area I specified that it can go half on, half off. So just depending on what it needs to cut, that's where it will go. Now here you can see the areas it skipped over because the grass is entirely too long. It needs to be under 4 inches there. It's putting it as an obstacle to avoid, which is good. It has great obstacle avoidance. It can detect between 200 different objects, but grass that's too tall needs to be trimmed down. So we're gonna have to do that this first time, but then we're mowing every couple days, so we'll never have to do that again. So I'm just gonna use the trimmer that we have to cut that down. And here in the backyard, after one pass, looking great. It has not done the final trimming around the edge at the end, but here we can already see some lines. The grass is now all the same length, and it could use another mow at a little bit lower to have a nice full carpet finish, but all of this looks great. It had no problems over here underneath the trampoline. We have put up boards for previous robot lawnmowers so they wouldn't get stuck, but over here it didn't get stuck and it didn't try to go over the bar there. The side yard is now complete. 0 interactions on that yard. It's now crossing the path to the last area. It has now completed all 3 areas. It did not use the edge trimmer this time, but there it was able to complete about 4,000 square feet and it has 25% battery left. And it completed the task in 1 hour and 46 minutes.
Start charging.
And so there, our first mow is complete. For the 3 different yards, there were 2 total interactions. That's pretty standard for robot lawn mowers. I'm now gonna go tweak a few different settings. I'm gonna make sure I add the different obstacles that are in the yard. We're gonna mow again and try the trimmer tomorrow. With that holoscope 360-degree navigation, I think they've really nailed navigating around the lawn, being able to get every section. Now it's time to tackle what takes the most time of having a robot lawnmower, which is edging. Usually it does the mowing, and then I still have to go around and edge the lawn. But now on the GOAT A3000 Pro, we have the TrueEdge Trimmer that's built in. It does come with extra trim cartridge that you can insert and easily swap out. You can get replacements as well. And now on it, it has a little screw hole here. That's how you're able to replace the cartridges, and you can buy more with those. It does come with one extra. Down here we have 2 brushes that it does come with extras as well, and that's to prevent anything from getting too close to it. And while it is trimming, the radar is actually detecting if anyone is within 1.5 meters and is going to stop trimming if you get too close, and it will notify you if you do come close while it is trimming. So taking a look inside here, you can see the trimmer module there, and you will just be replacing inside there. So I'm excited to see how that works. It cuts about 6 inches wide as it gets up to that edge. So to start trimming, we're just going to change this from auto to trimming. Select the areas we want to trim. So I just want these 2, and now we are ready to go. And right here you can see exactly how much it was able to cut. So about 6 inches like I mentioned before, and going right there. Now I wish it would get aligned right to that edge so we still have just a little bit more, but I love this concept how it's able to get there. So the last piece of this puzzle is just defining how close that boundary line needs to be when we are mapping. And here's our first look at it getting right up to the edge there and cutting that down. That is really nice. Now in this part, we are having it overlap so that it can automatically cut between the grass and the concrete when it's doing its mowing. But here, this is nice. It is able to get right up there to the edge. And after finishing doing the border, it's now going to the no entry zone and doing the true edge around that. That's really great to see, to get right up close to different objects, obstacles that you'll have in your yard. Now after a few weeks, we'll be able to tell exactly how much it's not getting, and we may need to adjust the boundary of where that is. I asked ECOVACS how to get closer to the edge, and they said in the edge mode, you can go to the mark flush boundaries, and instead of just doing where you want it to overlap the grass, you would also mark where you want it to get right up to the edge. In this mode, that's where it's going to automatically calculate where the edge is based on its sensors and get as close as it can, where otherwise it's going to just do where you mapped the yard. So I've set this area to now map right up against the edge. We're gonna see if it can take care of that. And then the other thing is we wanna go and make sure we mark that boundary. So there I have marked that boundary. And in here, you also have the option to go into the robot settings, and you can see the maintenance for the trimmer line. So we've trimmed the entire lawn about 2 times here, and it says that it's worked 211 times, and it still has about 129 counts left before we need to replace it. So here you can read about how to replace it, and then you can purchase more trim line. And it looks like this. It is very small, and then you will just need to remove the screw there and put it in and replace. Pretty simple process, but it would be nice if it was a little bit bigger. So interesting to see how this will work long term after having the yard set up properly. All right, here we go. Is it going to get better at this edge? You can already hear it's cutting quite a bit. I'd say that's some pretty good improvement. Just the very edge, it missed a little bit. All right, there we have some great improvement. Just that little patch over in the corner. Now there's a trade-off getting so close to the edge. It may get stuck if you don't have a solid edge, if you have a little bit more soft dirt. And there you can see that tiny bit left over, but it got much closer than it did before without using the edge mode to get right up to the edge. But make sure all kids stay away while it is in the trimming process.
Start charging.
That TrueEdge trimming is really going to save on time. Usually after it mows, I then have to go out and trim, and that takes just as long to be able to go through my yard and do that. So having that feature is really going to save time here. But we're getting pretty close to having that perfect lawn cut just with the robot lawnmower. Now, in comparison to a handheld edge trimmer, this is a bit quieter than one of those. Here you can hear the difference. And so it's really nice that that's all built in here. Now let's go ahead and talk about the power that's in this, which is the 32 volt energetic platform, which can really get your yard cut in no time. This 32 volt powerful platform is what is able to power the dual blade discs, which is 33 centimeters or 13 inches wide. So really going to be able to cut through your lawn in no time. These blades are also gap free. So there's going to be no little line right in between them. And then this is also able to mow at 0.7 meters per second, bringing this to 3 times more efficient, and it has a maximum of 400 watt cutting power, which is going to be super efficient, mowing 400 meters squared per hour. The height of the mowing is adjustable from 3 to 9 centimeters or 1.2 to 3.5 inches. And then it has super fast charging, which is great because this is able to recharge in 70 minutes at 189 watts, being able to cover that 3/4 of an acre. It is now time for the obstacle avoidance test. We have a late start. Now there are 3 ways in which this system works. First, we have the AI vision. This works independently of the obstacle height, so it can recognize grass, non-grass objects, cats, dogs, hedgehogs, and more. Then we have the 3D time of flight LiDAR, which is on the front of the robot, and it is height sensitive, so it can detect objects as low as 10 centimeters. And there may still be a few visual blind spots, but then we have the bumper. So if it doesn't see something and it bumps into it, the mower will then turn away if it physically touches an object. Here I have a bunch of different objects here. This is using the AV 3D obstacle avoidance system. So I've also gone into the settings, turned on the AI detection that's going to be able to detect animals, poles like a trampoline pole and other things. There you can see it was able to get all the way to the end of the run without getting stuck on anything. Now I really like how it gets right up to it and then it goes away and does not actually bump into it. So far, it is working properly. All right, next it's coming up in the bowling ball, which is less than 10 centimeters. And so once it bumps into it, the bumper function then turns it the other way. Exactly what we want to be seeing. Now, the more objects you have on your yard, the less grass is going to get mowed. Recommended to always pick them up. But this is a good idea of if you happen to leave something or the kids leave something, what is going to be happening. And there it perfectly went around that bowling ball. Love seeing that. And for its final pass, moving around the bucket there, completing the lawn. Now we didn't get all of the lawn finished. We're going to need to do this again, but I'd say this definitely passes the obstacle avoidance test. All right, now we can go in and we can go through the mapping, and the charging station is crucial. So make sure that you have set that up and it can't be moved once you've done the setup. And here when we map, we're going to use the side that does not have the TrueEdge trimmer. All right, so now we have a little remote here that we can control it. Now we're at the starting point. I'm going to hit start. And now I'm going to drive around the lawn just as I've demoed, and so that we have a complete map. Let's go ahead and tap auto, see how that does. There, it automatically finds the border. So if I don't like that, I can tap auto, and then I can hold the backtrack and it will automatically go backwards so that I can have it do it correctly the way I want it to be done. Now we're just going to keep driving like I was before. Now we can go ahead and try the auto map again. Now you can see it's doing a great job staying right up against that border. Now, the grass is getting pretty long, so typically you want to cut the grass to a nice height, as this is going to keep it regularly cut and short. But here we're going to see how it is able to handle this much taller area. We've now finished going around the yard, doing our best to get a nice boundary area. And here we have now closed the connection. So it has completed that. We can hit end right here. And now we can see that we have one of our lawns done. Now I'd want to go and map the other areas, and we're going to create a path that it can drive between those. Now, a few things I want to mention about mapping. So when you're first mapping the lawn and you have like dirt next to a lawn, get as close as you can to the edge there. If you have concrete next to the lawn, I would do half and half. That way it can go all the way up and get perfectly in the middle of that, so you don't need the trimmer there. Now, a few other things that you can do in the map are pretty cool. So here we're gonna go into the map and we have the option to edit the map. So in any of these areas, I can actually expand or divide these areas at any time. So let's say I want to change where the front yard is actually two different areas. I can come down here to the divide option, tap divide, tap the front lawn. I can use the robot to draw a dividing line, or I can just draw a line right here. So I can choose where I want this line to be, right there in the middle. I can choose, hit the check mark, and it's going to create that divide. Now this little area right here, I want it to be shorter than the rest of the backyard, so I've done that, and now it's created those two different areas to use that. Now the next thing that we can do is we can actually add a part of the area. Now here I ended up making the area not big enough, or maybe you expanded part of your yard and you want to add that. All you need to do is go into the add, and then you can redraw where you want to add part of that lawn. So I'm gonna go through and redraw this just to expand this yard just a little bit. Remember, the side without the trimmer is where you wanna start. And here I have all the same controls as normal mapping. I have the option to do auto as well as backtrack. So here we're almost to the edge. Now I'm gonna take this corner extra wide because I wanna make sure that it can trim this little corner right here. So we're gonna go very wide, and then we're gonna turn in. All right, let's just drive it back. Let's see if this works. I'm gonna drive it right back to where I started. All right, we are back to where I began the extra. Tap end, and it found that it was a duplicate area and it merged them together. So got it, and now we have increased the size of our area. That's awesome. Now, two more things about mapping is adding an area. I already did it here. You can add different objects, so make sure you do that so that it doesn't get stuck in the dirt there. And the last thing to talk about is the charging station. Let's talk charger station placement. So it is recommended to have it in an area where there's nothing in the way when it undocks, which is great. But I like to have mine right here outside of the grass area so that no grass grows around it. So for the best option, you're gonna place it on the grass and it's just going to work. But when you place it here, it automatically makes a cutout thinking the grass is going over this way. And I have had it get stuck when my charging station was back a little bit too far. So my first recommendation is you could just throw it on the grass. That would work great. Second recommendation is if you are doing it like this, where you have it just off of the grass just a little bit, make sure the charging station is as close to the grass as you can get it. We had some dirt right here separating it for a little bit, and it got stuck a few times when it was doing the final edge around it, but this should work pretty good. Now the third option is when you're mapping here, you can see where the charging station is, you see that the robot backed up a little bit, and there we have this dotted line. So in that area, you can't make any no-go zones. And that is about a 6 foot by 8 foot area. Now, when I did some testing and I drove the goat outside of that area and started to create a pattern, it automatically made a path from the charging station to the start of the area, which is cool. You could have the charging station really far away from your area, and then it drives out and then begins cutting, and there's gonna be no issue. But when I hit save, it created a really big box that pretended like all of this was area that needed to be cut. So I think that is an issue that hopefully they can get that fixed, but that might be possible where you can have a path going from the charging station to your area. But for now, I'm going to be keeping the charging station as close to the grass as possible. And one last tip is you could divide the area that the charging station is in and kind of cut off that little area. It kind of works, but one thing to note, if you delete the area the charging station is in, the entire map is deleted and you have to remap your entire yard. So don't do that like I did. Well, another generation of robots and another year closer to getting the perfect lawn mowed without having to do any extra work. So overall, after testing out the GOAT A3000 Pro, I'm really impressed with all that it can do. There was a lot of learning that I had throughout this video, getting it mapping correctly, seeing how all the new different things worked, and I am overly impressed by how this is able to perform. Now, we're still a little too high on that interactions per mow. You know, we didn't have one time where it did it perfectly as soon as we started the trimmer, then we kind of got a little bit too far in the edge. And so there's still a little bit of things to work out there, but I think it is close enough where I can definitely recommend that this is going to be a great robot for many options. Here, this is at my parents' house where they aren't able to go out and mow the lawn. You know, they can do some trimming here and there, but this is nice to take care of their lawn without constant supervision. You know, every once in a while, they're gonna have to go out and hit reset to have it start again. And so hopefully over the last mapping that I did, we've narrowed it down where that's not going to happen anymore. And I'll be sure to update down in the comments how that is going. So this is going to be great for good size yards. So this can cover 3/4 of an acre. And so it's able to do this entire yard in one battery, which is awesome. But if you have too steep of a yard, this may be an issue, but didn't get to test it out here because there is no hill, but shouldn't be a problem for just a standard size slope over on the yard. So here is a final look at the interactions per mow on how everything did. So down here we have the different mows, and then here we had how many interactions for the full mow. Starting off a little rough, getting caught on the tree as well as the charger, but then by the third time we mowed, it didn't get stuck at all, or even when we trimmed, which is great to see the improvement there. The TrueEdge Trimmer was really cool, being able to see how it's able to cut that 6 inches right up next to the edge. That's exactly what we have needed out in the robot mowing world, and this is able to do that. Now, there's always things that can be improved. You know, it'd be great if there was one that also cut down, and you know, we can keep going and advancing every year, but I'd say this is a great step in the right direction. Now, if I could improve anything about this, I'd love to see 4-wheel drive, being able to get itself unstuck from many of the situations. The 2 wheels sometimes just keep spinning until it digs itself in, and then you have to pull it out. But if it had 4-wheel drive, the front wheels could turn and then get out of those situations. But always room for improvement on every product. So if you have any further questions about the ECOVACS GOAT A3000 Pro, please let me know down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.